Okay, we'll start this Committee of the Whole meeting for June 25th. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I would like to acknowledge that we are holding this meeting on the unceded lands of the Mi'kmaq. Attendance, so Councillor Hatfield did advise that she will be a bit late, and we'll see about Councillor Cleveland. He may be late, but he may not be able to make it. But he did advise, so can I just cover that now? Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, so we've got a declaration of conflict of interest. Actually, you know what? We are going to remove, usually have this printed. We're going to remove the grad one. Did I even add it? 9F. Okay, so we're going to remove 9F and 9H. Yes, request to remove 9H, request to remove 9F because it's already been taken care of, and we want to move, which one was it, Councillor? 9B is, if everybody's okay, if we can move that up before the staff reports, or do you want to do it before the presentations? Shouldn't take long.
And that motion will take a few minutes to discuss.
Yep, okay. So are we okay if we move that? And we're going to add senior safety program. You all got that there? Okay, so any one of those things that you're not okay with, let me know. Otherwise, I need a motion to make those changes to the agenda, please. Okay, Councillor Lesser, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay. Let's do that now because you're going to have to go. So let's do the
Yes, thank you.
I have another meeting at 4 o'clock, and that's the reason I have to, and I don't want this to be put off for the rest of the summer. My motion would be that we remove the $50 permit fee for the open pit burning for the backyard fire pits. And so far this year, there's only been 5 permits taken out. So it's not like it's a huge money generator for the town of Yarmouth, I can tell you that $50 fee. And my concern's not so much for the people that can afford to go to the cottage or can spend a week at Kedgie, but rather for those that can't. And, you know, knowing the importance of, and the fact that campfires, a backyard campfire is good for mental health, and it's an opportunity for those that don't have the funds to pay $50 every year for a fee, who can construct a fire pit of their own design that meets the criteria. They still have to apply for the permit so that we know where those things are at. But I think the town should waive the fee. I don't think it's just to relieve that pressure on those that just can't afford it. So that would be my motion.
Okay, have I got a seconder? Okay, Councillor Lacroix, Chair Lacroix. Any discussion? Go ahead, CAO.
Could we request a report from staff?
Sure. We get a report from staff, that's halfway through the summer, but we can.
You can get it before council.
Okay.
That'd be fine. Thank you.
Okay. So what's the next step?
Amend the motion, or?
Amend the motion to request the staff.
Okay. Yeah, I would do that. Amend the motion to request a report. Thank you.
Okay. You okay with that? Yeah. Okay, and it'll be before council. Good question. What are we looking for?
We've had an open-air burning bylaw for a year or two, not very long, and so I'd be looking for comment from the chief in terms of how it's gone, how many permits were taken out, the inspections, did they reject any, and what his thought is around the fee itself. That's the comment, or these proposed amendments. So does he think it would have any effect on renewals, or, yeah, just interested in that. I think you have staff to advise you. I think it's worthwhile to hear their voice when you're changing bylaws.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. I agree. I just was wondering how
Yeah.
a fee would affect that, like how that affects the fee or how they're intertwined.
He probably would have, because he always says, give us this direction, like why, why? So that's a fair question you're asking. Okay, amended motion. Chief, you got anything to say now? All those in favor? Aye. Oh, so can't just say, you didn't say aye.
I'm wondering if that maybe the $50 fee might encourage more people to actually fill out the permit, so then we know where they are. I think as Councillor Dare said, if people can't afford the $50, are they illegally doing it to begin with, and then maybe the pits aren't up to standard? I don't know. We actually, when this happened, we actually switched to propane, and it's been working out good for us. So
They still have to fill out the form. Yeah. Does that help? Yeah, okay. Anyone else? I can speak to some questions. Yep. Go, yeah, by all means.
I guess what kind of data would you be looking for specifically from the counselors? Just numbers of engagement?
I think it would be helpful for council if we had a report on the program overall, how it's gone year to year, and also your opinion in terms of the fee, because you've been dealing with the customers.
Yep.
You or your staff been dealing with the customers as they've come in to get fees.
Sure.
To get permits.
That's fine. Yep. Any questions whilst I'm here? No? Okay, good. I'll get back to you with a report for council. Thank you.
Right, for council. That's all right. We're good. Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Okay. So we have a presentation, service-based homelessness count report. And we have Mary on the line. Welcome. So we're going to let you take over, and we'll keep track of the questions that we have.
Great. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me. And I know that I have 10 minutes, so I'll try to run through this really quickly. And then I can always go back to slides if there are more questions. Just so folks know that my name is Mary Sweetman. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Community Development at Acadia University. And I'm also an active member of the Valley's kind of working group or coalition of housing and security called Homeless No More, which would be fairly equivalent to Choice. And I work closely, or I have been working closely with Choice over the last year, and really glad to be here to support them in their work. I'll just share my screen. And maybe if someone could let me know if you could see that.
We can see it. It's just if you want to bring the whole, if you're going to put the whole, there we go. Perfect.
You got that? And then you can hear me all right?
Sure can.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So I don't know how familiar folks are around the table of the homeless counts that are happening, or these service-based counts. But they have been going on for quite a while in Nova Scotia in different regions. This is the first time that Yarmouth has been involved in the one that I've been conducting, and I've conducted 3 of these counts over the last 6 years, and it's slowly been growing to be now the western region of Nova Scotia. So we're really pleased that Yarmouth has been involved. What a service-based count is that it allows us to count the number of folks that are connected to services that are experiencing housing insecurity or homelessness as defined by the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness. So it captures kind of a spectrum of homelessness or housing insecurity. The count is run in a month as opposed to a PIT count, which you might have heard of before, which is a place and time count that often happens in urban centers, where a service-based count happens in rural places. And service-based counts are happening all over the country. Just so you know that we're just asking for 16 years of old or people that are 16 years of old or older in this count, and that we use unique identifiers, so we cannot track those individuals specifically, but that this is a way for us to remove any duplicates. I'm going to get right into the data, so if you have any other questions about methodology or ethics, we can save that for the questions. In the whole Western area, or Western region, we had 47 organizations participate, and these are a range of organizations. And so essentially with this type of research, it's the service providers that are the participants that are filling out the surveys based on known individuals in an organization. So what's really important in this research is that it's an underestimation of the actual numbers, because we're only counting those that are connected to services. So we know we're missing individuals. So it's really important that when we're talking about the numbers, just remember that these are only people that are connected to services and those services that did participate in this survey. So in total in the Western Zone, we had 506 individuals identified, and the 4 categories are provisionally accommodated, at risk, unsheltered, and emergency sheltered. This next slide is quite busy, but you can zone in on Yarmouth County if you can, but you can also compare to other counties. These were all the counties that were participating in the count this year in November 2024. I'm going to get into our numbers a little bit more in Yarmouth in just a second, but just again, there are these places on this chart that say unable to report. It doesn't mean that it's a 0, but ethically, according to the ethics approval that I've gotten from Nova Scotia Health Authority and also from the Tri-Council, that I cannot report on numbers fewer than 5. So even though you don't see a number on unable to report, doesn't mean there isn't a number there. Also, low numbers may reflect service availability. And I think this is the important part for Yarmouth, is that low numbers don't necessarily mean that there isn't a problem. It means that there may not be services that are able to capture these numbers. In Yarmouth County, the total number of individuals that were reported was 71, with 26 being provisionally accommodated, which could be something like couch surfing, for example. At risk was 11, and I can talk more about what at risk means in the questions if you have questions about that. Unsheltered and emergency shelter, these are the 2 important ones that we want to concentrate on today, which is 19 and 15 respectively. For individuals by age, our largest category in the Yarmouth area is 20 to 29. Gender is a fairly even split, with more female identifying individuals being reported. And this could be a reflection of the services that are provided in the Yarmouth area through Juniper House, I'll say. This one is a tricky one because it's demographic information, and so I don't want to get too lost in this. But again, this has to do with what is known from the service providers. So for example, some of this data might not be representative because the service provider would have to know this information. And we said in the survey that if you were not aware or not certain, that you would skip this question. So we didn't want to let anyone make any assumptions about someone's mental illness or mental health or their status, for example. Income sources. So in the Yarmouth area, most were on income assistance, or that was the high, not most, but the highest reported type of income. Unknown, again, we said don't make any assumptions about someone's income. So there were a lot that reported unknown. Employment was full-time, part-time, or casual was 9, and no income was 8. And then we had lower numbers that we can't report on below that. This was an interesting one as well. We like to try to tell the story of the children involved because we're not technically reporting on the children, but we did ask questions in the survey for folks to talk about children that they might for. And so I think what's important in this slide is that in Yarmouth, we had 71 surveys completed on individuals that we can identify. And then if we realize that in those surveys, there were about 25 children identified as being connected to those 71 people. So in fact, there's more like 96 individuals that are captured in the Yarmouth area under this survey or under this research. And again, I'd like to emphasize that that's an underestimation because those are the ones that are known to the service providers that participated. Another question that we had was on barriers to housing, and our two highest, which was similar to the count before. Yarmouth didn't participate in the count before, but I think it is interesting to say that these won't be surprising, that rents are too high and low income are our two highest for why there are barriers to sufficient housing. And we also talk about housing as far as safe, affordable, and dignified housing. And so the rents are too high and low income, followed closely by poor housing options or conditions available. A barrier to housing also may be the mental illness or health of the individual renting, so being discriminated against for that. Family breakdown, conflict, and domestic violence, and addiction and substance use are all fairly high. Missing amenities. This was a new question that we asked in the survey in 2024. And this was around those that are housed, what is missing and what is making their housing not meeting criteria. And so we had issues with affordable or sufficient heating, fire protection, cooking facilities, indoor plumbing, bathing facilities, refrigeration, electricity, and safe drinking water as all being issues. Please note that on this one, you could fill out more than one thing. So there could be individuals who are experiencing all of these things, for example. This question is around the assets and supports that do exist. And one of the reasons for asking this question is that we recognize that it's harder, or that there's been less recognition about the issues of rural homelessness across Canada, and the focus has been on urban settings. And this question helps us justify trying to keep people in place and supporting people in their home communities. And so that individuals do have access to nature, community connections, and reliable family and friends. And if they were displaced to another community, those things would be lost potentially. So the three key areas of the final report, and I think this was circulated, we did write a report on the whole Western region. And the three key areas of support that we're looking at are social housing, financial supports, and support services. Of course, these are intersected, and it's hard to parcel them apart. But in the final report, we do talk about them individually around housing needs, that housing continuum, and being able to invest in the housing that's in our communities, but that also have social supports and support services, and that there are financial supports too, whether they're renters or homeowners. So what I'd like to finish with is recommendations that we really saw come out from all of these counties, but specifically in Yarmouth, it's really addressing the lack of emergency shelter for adults in the county. More broadly, we also saw the issue for decentralizing services to bring more localized support to rural communities, addressing transportation barriers, expanding emergency shelter options in some communities and supportive housing in others. And so really, this is really important to me, is that when we look at data, then we connect with local coalitions to say, what are you also seeing on the ground, and using the data to support what people are seeing on the ground. And so that expanding emergency shelters and or investing in more housing support workers is really a question that we want to pose to Choice. Increasing the availability of affordable housing is defined as shelter costs that cost no more than 30% of household income, and enhance financial supports from rent supplements to basic income. Improving access to harm reduction and mental health services, that's with that. We can't just create more housing. They also have to come with support services. And again, that's leaning into those organizations, those amazing organizations that already exist in your county, and saying, like, what are they seeing? What kind of supports are needed? Improving access to harm, I did that one. Prioritizing prevention-based approaches. There's an opportunity here to look at prevention. We have a lot of people who identify as being in that 6-month range of experiencing homelessness. And what could we do to ensure that that doesn't go in any further? providing stable core funding for housing programs and shelters to reduce burnout and improve staff retention. And this one is really key, that we see some real burnout issues in our frontline nonprofit organizations. I don't know, that might have been a little bit more than 10 minutes. I'll stop sharing and open it up to questions. Is that appropriate?
Yes, thank you for all that. We might have to get you to share again to put it up to ask questions.
Sure.
Anyone have any questions? Go ahead.
I guess more of a comment than question, but thank you very much for the report. I'm just looking through some of the barriers and things that are happening. I know this is Yarmouth County, not just Yarmouth Town. And it would be interesting to see the difference between the town of Yarmouth, where I think poverty rates are higher, but housing may not be as much of an issue, I'm guessing, versus the county. But the other, like looking through, like the price of rent, it's pretty hard to control that. I'm thinking of what things we can do. The price of income, or the low income is something that's difficult. But one of the ones that come at the top very high, we have things in place for domestic violence, addictions, but the mental illness is one that I think is causing a lot of issues for people that I've talked to, which also ties into the addiction and substance abuse. And if we had, I think we need to advocate more for supports around mental health for some of them, because a lot of these other things, and we go down the list and it talks about, access to transportation. We've just made our transit free. We do have, if you own a house, we do have tax incentives for property taxes. So we have quite a few things that are going on, but there are some things I think that are difficult as a municipality to address. But it would be good if we could use this data to ask above us, I guess, if we could get more mental health supports, which I know, some of those things are coming, we hear, but to me that seems like one of the biggest issues, that when you tie everything together, it seems like mental health is one of the big barriers.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation. And the reason I do this service-based count is because it's an ask from the local organizations across the region. So I would call it community-based action research. And my hope is that we can use these numbers to affect change. And one of those things is bringing more money. And so I think you're right, using this data in ways that can advocate to the province or federally for mental health supports is a wonderful, wonderful strategy. Thanks, Derek.
Is this, I'm looking at the page that Councillor Lesser was looking at, the assets and the number. So what is this, percentage of individuals that don't have access to nature? Like, that should, you know what I mean?
It's the percent that do.
It's the what?
It's
Oh,
the
the percent
percentage
that
that do
do.
have access. Yeah. No, and that would be known by the service provider. And so this is the other thing that's really important with this research, and this is a limitation of service-based counts, is that it's the service providers who are filling out the survey based on the participant or based on the individual. And so if it is not appropriate for them to ask a certain question, we say don't ask the question. So for example, if it's a service organization that is working with folks that are feeling very vulnerable, but they do make the contact that day, they might just say, can I just fill out the first few questions? And then they would submit the survey based on the first couple questions.
Gotcha.
And so some of the later on, the descriptors, I would call them, may not be as accurate as like the number itself. And again, remember that it's only people that are connected to services. So that's one of the reasons why we do it in November, is that that is 1 month where we have more people coming into service providers as the temperatures get colder. But we know we are missing people who aren't connected.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out I know the numbers are in front of me. I just can never figure out what real numbers are. I can't.
I agree. Numbers are tricky.
And it's really hard because I'm looking at access to nature. So we're in Yarmouth and Yarmouth County. Like, look out your window. Walk down to the
Right.
waterfront, or if you're in the county, walk outside. Maybe there's folks that can't do that, and that's it, but it's certainly not half of the people. It's the numbers really, it's not you, I know who sends these in. It's just, like, yeah, I just need some numbers that are real and can't seem to get them.
Yeah, and I think that the nature one is an interesting one where we can just say, well, it's rural, so everyone has access.
Yeah.
But there are barriers, like you're saying, that if you, one thing that we've also found is that some people feel discriminated against in natural spaces, or they've been told that they have to leave natural spaces, like a park, because they're unwanted there. And so they wouldn't go back to that place, for example, if they've experienced discrimination in that area because of the way that they present.
Okay. Can it be because that's the way they feel? Maybe others don't
I
feel that
suppose
way?
so.
Okay. I'm just trying to.
I bet there's
I shouldn't dig too
examples
deep.
on both sides of that.
Yeah, okay.
And I think Wanda is in the audience who might be able to speak to that a
is.
little bit more.
Yeah, Wanda, if you can speak to it, come on up. You can't yell
Or-
from there, but you can. There's a microphone
Yeah,
right here.
and Wanda, I welcome Wanda to speak to any of your questions as well. I really
Yeah.
feel like we can partner the data with what's actually happening and the stories of what's actually happening.
Press your button there, Wanda. The middle, maybe there's one button. There you go.
There, now I'm all lit up. So my name is Wanda, and I'm the new chair of Choice. So just to try to get back to one of your questions there, is that you were talking about the nature.
Yeah, I need to understand what that is.
Well, because when you're talking with homelessness, it doesn't only mean that people don't have a place to live. There's so many different scenarios why that person doesn't have a place to live. It's the same as the nature. If I'm having panic attacks 24/7 and I'm able to go and it takes one person to say something to me, I'm done,
Okay?
right? So the day that these events were being done, recorded, that could have been a bad day for that person. So that's where these numbers are coming from. I think if I'm saying that right, it's not everybody's having a good day when they're doing these numbers. There's discrimination that comes into them. There's what the person looks like. Like these are all, and it all comes down to your mental health, right? So that's one of my things that I would take away from being when it comes to the nature
Yep.
part,
Thank you for that.
right?
Yeah, it's just hard to look at the numbers and justify it unless you have the rest of the information.
Yeah.
So the recommendations, these are not for us, these are for everybody, right? These are for all levels of government? What
That's
is it?
correct.
Yeah, okay.
And I think what we've done on the research side of it is say, these are the general recommendations. And in the final report, we say one of our main recommendations for all levels of government, in particular municipalities, is to look to your local coalition and say, how do we look at these numbers and what you're seeing to really try to focus in on the recommendations that are most important to this area. And I think it's the place that Choice, for sure, and the other organizations that are connected to Choice that really do know where money or resources could be best spent. Is that fair, Wanda?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Anyone else, any questions? I could ask 1,000, I could, but we're going to have, we're going to have a conversation, Wanda, at another time.
I just have one question for the committee, if I may. And then maybe while Mary's still on, that she'd be able to help also. So I guess we had a meeting last week for Choice. And then we just wanted to have one question that we wanted to ask the mayor and the council. So the question is, what strategies does the council have in place or plan to implement to effectively address homelessness in the area, in the town? So that was just one of the questions that I just wanted to put forward to the council.
Okay, so we're gonna hold that question for a second, and I'm gonna let Councillor Hatfield ask hers, and then we're gonna come back to your question.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I'm looking for context. I'm trying to understand what the numbers mean in relation to our area and what are the unique identifiers that have been found, or are there any unique identifiers in the Yarmouth area, or are the statistics that we're seeing in the Yarmouth area, particularly in terms of how the respondents are viewing their situation, not so much the actual numbers, but how the respondents are viewing their situation. I'd like to know if there's any differences in the areas that you've covered. You look at South Shore, Tri-Counties, and the Annapolis Valley as 3 distinct regions. So to help me understand the issues in Yarmouth, I'd like to know how respondents who are identifying as homeless or in some form of housing distress in other areas are viewing their circumstances, for instance, access to nature or access to education or mental health services, all of those things. I just want to know what are the commonalities and what are the differences?
Sure. Yeah, the one of the identifying differences are based on shelters and shelter beds. And so those communities that have shelters have different result in different numbers for us. And so it's really plain to see where there might need to be more shelter beds and the types of shelter beds. So gender is an interesting one where when we see more transition housing for women and children, that we have better numbers and better stories to tell around what's happening for those individuals, but not very good data or stories to tell about men in places where there aren't just like a gender neutral shelter or just an open shelter. And so that would be one of the things that we see in the Yarmouth area is that the youth story and numbers and women, children numbers are fairly clear, but the numbers with regards to male identifying folks is not as clear because there's a disconnect with sheltering there. Where compared to the Valley, where there's a lot of shelter beds, new recent shelter beds. And one of the reasons why they do have new supports and shelter beds in those areas is because they've been involved in the count for 2 previous counts. So over the 6 years, we've done the count in the Valley. And they've been able to access federal level and provincial level funding. And so their numbers show, and we work really closely with nonprofits in that area as well as Homeless No More to say like the story or the numbers there aren't that we need more shelter beds in that area, but we need more transition or support workers to help people transition out of shelter into supportive housing. And what are those next stages? So those are some differences that we can see. The other interesting difference is around the decentralization of supports. And so where there are these bigger centers like Yarmouth, we see the numbers, there's more people coming from other communities to get resources there. So if we could decentralize some resources so people can stay closer to home, that would also be helpful. And so I do have a presentation on the Tri-County where we can look at kind of those numbers as well. I don't know if that completely helps answer that question. Do you want to ask more specific if that wasn't helpful?
I will. So in the Valley, for example, and they have lots of space for, they've accessed the federal funding and everything for shelters. If they asked where all these folks are from, would the answer be all from the Valley?
Yes and no. Most are from the Valley area. But not necessarily from Kentville, which is where most of the shelter beds are. So, and what's really tricky about counting is that there is so much fluidity to individuals who are experiencing homelessness. Fluidity from the typology of homelessness, from being unsheltered to provisionally accommodated to at risk. So going back and forth on that spectrum, but also geographically moving. So moving in and out of when, so for example, right now, there are less people showing up to service providers needing help because there are more people that are able to live off the land and are choosing or just can at this point. And then also moving to places where they can access services. So a story that we hear, for example, in the Windsor area where there isn't a shelter, is that there are people who are choosing to stay in tents because that's where they can, Windsor is still their home community, and the transportation between Windsor and Kentville is not great. Public transportation. And so even if they were offered a bed in Kentville in one of the shelters, they're saying, I don't want to go there because I don't have the social network that I do in Windsor. And so they're choosing to still stay unsheltered or living rough, even though there might be a bed available for them, but all the other parts of their life are not in Kentville, they're in Windsor. And so there people aren't just that. It needs to be adequate. We can't just like take people, displace them, and put them into shelters in different communities. And so I think there is this argument that if we build it, more people will come who are homeless and will have a homeless issue. And I think it's more complex than that. I think it's more nuanced than that. And I do think that we already have, according to these numbers, within our, like in the Yarmouth County, there are numbers that justify saying that a shelter would be for community members that are living here that need it. And I think that even just exploring that even more and digging deeper with Choice and with the organizations that are already there to, like the study that I did was only 1 month, right? And so I do think that there's more nuance to discover by saying like, wait, we can recognize the numbers say that there is an issue, so let's connect with Choice to say, what are we seeing on a day-to-day basis? These are folks from our community who need a shelter bed now, today. Wanda, I don't know if you want to add to that. Is that fair from your perspective?
Okay. All right, anyone else?
So just, if I may, Your
Yeah,
Worship.
please.
Yeah.
Go right.
Excuse me, a couple comments. I recently had the opportunity to attend a presentation, Dr. Alina Turner, and I don't know what institution she's with, but they had taken the approach of modeling the impacts of interventions and over the long term, which I found really interesting because what it said is that the best scenario is to approach it from a number of perspectives, not just build a shelter and problem solved. It's all those things that you have within your recommendations. And so we've been talking a lot about shelters, but I think it's important for Choice and for the community and for council to look at the long list. And as Derek pointed out, the mental health supports. You know, there may be lots of areas that need to be propped up or improved in order to address the problem. And what the modeling that I saw suggested is you really have to take that approach. And it's not a shotgun approach. It is maybe a holistic approach. It's a broader perspective on the whole situation. So thank you for the presentation. It resonates, and it's not a simple problem.
Yeah. And so therefore it's not a simple solution. I think you're right on with a holistic approach and saying like, so then what can we do as counselors around your table to say, what can we do to add to that holistic approach? And that kind of goes back to Wanda's question, I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was thinking after Wanda's question, it is a very direct and important question. So what is town council doing?
Oh, yeah, the question.
And so one of the things that I would say in terms of context is that the town of Yarmouth has been a leader in public housing going back to the 1950s.
Yeah.
The mayor's grandfather was mayor I think at the time when we started.
He brought the public housing in.
Right, and so
Within
Yarmouth, there's something like 500, close to 500 public housing units, And the town of Yarmouth was a partner in every one of those. So we worked with the province and the federal government to establish those, and up until a recent service exchange agreement with the province, we participated in the operating losses that made those properties affordable. Now the province has fully taken on that responsibility, but that is the history that the town of Yarmouth has when it comes to housing. It's always been on our agenda, and it's always been within our budget. More recently, Shaw Avenue is an example of the work of this council and the previous council, where the Affordable Housing Association of Nova Scotia was looking to do a project within our community. Town of Yarmouth had a piece of land that was suitable for the purpose. We donated the land for the purpose, and we have, I don't know how many units are involved there, a couple dozen units that it looks like they'll be opening up maybe later this year. Also down on Water Street, the town of Yarmouth has been supporting a private residential development. It is, again, I think it's probably in the area of a couple dozen units. To put that in context, not since the last public housing project has there been a project in this community of that size. So we see ones and twos, duplexes and that sort of thing built over the last 20 years, but we don't see 20-unit buildings, and so we're starting to see a little bit of that now. So another thing the town of Yarmouth has done, this council's done successfully, is that we've applied through the Federal Housing Accelerator Fund, and we actually applied twice. We weren't successful in the first round, but we went ahead and started with the initiatives that we had proposed within that application anyway, because if it was important to do with their money, it was important enough to try with our money. So we began that journey. When the opportunity came to apply a second time, of course, we had to come up with new initiatives because anything you had started didn't count, but we did. And so we have been successful, and later on today's agenda, there's an approval for a parking study. What's a parking study got to do with housing? Well, within our land use bylaw, we have restrictions that if you're going to have 4 units or 6 units on a property, you have to be able to provide adequate parking. The housing strategy is going to help us to look at that a little bit differently and look at it in a way that will help housing to occur within our community. So there are a number of initiatives. You can find them on our website, and we're just getting going with that. But you asked about what the strategies of this council. Well, we did a priority setting session last month, and I want to tell you that the Housing Accelerator Fund initiatives was the #2 priority of this council.
Yep. Go ahead, Councillor.
As you asked the question, I started writing down some things that I'm aware of, and one thing is our police force is very much advocating for wellness checks as opposed to going in and telling people they have to go. So I think that helps with the stigma that is there, and I think the police are really good at doing that. If you call and say, we know that there's somebody tenting at a certain spot, the police will go do a wellness check. We have a lot of food security incentives in Yarmouth. Our deputy mayor is actually in a new role now to kind of oversee that. But we have a lot of programs that will help with food. Our transportation, we've just made public transportation free, which we're hearing all kinds of positive stories, I think all of us, about how that's allowing people to go to work and save money and get around. There are things in the community like Juniper House and Shift that are supporting that work, and they're separate organizations, but ones that we obviously support. I think a big one is economic development, and we've taken away the fees for permits, for building permits, and I know it doesn't necessarily connect directly to people who might be homeless because they're not necessarily looking at building a house, but every time there's a new house built, ideally there should be another space open somewhere down the line, and I think that strategy is working. I just look at my neighborhood, which I think 3 of us live in that neighborhood, and I was just thinking there's 4 units, I think, or 4 buildings just in my block that have gone from not looking the greatest to either starting to look good or are in the process of turning into something that looks good. we have minimum housing standards, which I don't think the public knows enough about, but we do have ways that people that are living in a house that doesn't meet those standards can report that safely. And I think the biggest thing that we really need to do is just be advocates for funding from other levels. I think all three levels have a part to play, but really when it comes down to it, the amount of money a smaller community would be able to put in ourselves directly into building public housing would be quite limited, because it's not a municipal mandate, I guess, in that sense. But I know since I've been on council, it's been talked about, like everybody here seems, it's a topic that's been talked about a lot, and we are concerned. We want to make sure that people have a place to live. But I do see some light in these buildings that the CAO was talking about. There's a lot of projects that are starting, or at least on the books, that there's now bulldozers and things on site, which is exciting to see properties develop. And I know some of those, you hear the comments, everybody can't afford those, but ideally somebody else will move into that house and open something up. So I think we are kind of on the right page, but it takes a long time. But I know, Wanda, you and I have talked a number of times about this, and I know your interest. I know you've gone yourself on the trail and went and met people and that kind of thing. So thank you for the work that you've been doing and advocating for it. So thank you.
Yeah, Wanda's a gem. I don't know how else to say it. I don't know how else to say it. So I think Councillor Lesser covered most of my list. The food security piece is huge, not to put the deputy mayor on the, but food's expensive, and we understand that. So what do you have to choose from? I will say this: I don't think there's a day in this town that you can't get a hot meal. There's a way to find food. This is a whole other conversation. You can find food. I'm not a fan of Band-Aids. I'm a fan of fixing, and you can only put so many Band-Aids on before you just say enough's enough. So I would also say, and get myself in trouble, you help the people that genuinely need the help, and then you help the others sort out what they can do too. So when you look at addictions and mental health issues, and some of our seniors that don't have either, they haven't been provided enough money to even take care of themselves in their old age. It's really, really sad. So to Derek's point, we have to advocate for that. That's not ours to do, but we need to do it. I think the provincial government needs to maybe do their job, look at what are your mandates, and one of them is health. That includes mental health. Housing's on their list. I think we're all coming together and trying to get as much as we can, and we have put up and are in the process of putting up more housing. Like Derek said, when one's built, they just move, it just moves along. And I just have a million questions, but that's not the question. That's not it. The food security piece, I hope, is going to be, especially under Steve, that it's not a Band-Aid. We're not going to give a man a fish, because we've been doing that for years, and I think if it's caused entitlement and everything else that's put people in a dangerous place. Again, that's aside from the people that, mental health and those issues. So we need to keep advocating for provincial helps on every level. And he mentioned everything else, the free transit and everything. We've got 3 teachers at the table here. I don't know how much basics is taught in school. I don't really care about the Pythagoras theorem, but I need to figure out how to do a budget. So, and again, with community services and things like that, I don't know how it works. I just see too many examples of am I getting a check that I don't need, or am I going out and finding a job? Because there's lots of jobs around here we just don't see. And I just grew up having to have 2 jobs. So I don't know what we've, 2, 3 at times. But anyway, we need to fix for those that need. So this is exciting to have. Kelly, you're on.
Hi. I just have a question about the demographic that your study's looking at. So our CAO mentioned, and Derek as well, of all the incentives that the town is presently doing and has done in the past. And I'm just thinking, especially working in a high school, we see a demographic of potentially homeless students and students who are homeless at times that could never access the incentives that we have already. They're not going out to rent a low-income apartment. They're in an emergency situation. So your study am I right in thinking that it encompasses those, that demographic more so than anything else?
That's right. And that's why the numbers of at-risk are quite low, is because the organizations, the community organizations and the service providers, the nonprofits that we mostly work with, are those that are frontline, connecting with those that are unsheltered, emergency sheltered. And so thank you for bringing that up, because I think it's important to know that that at-risk number is much bigger, because we're not necessarily capturing those that are just maybe telling their doctor, I'm choosing between rent and heating right now, and I'm not sure if I'm going to have a place to stay in a couple months. And I think that's where the preventative work, we're not capturing those numbers, but that's a real issue around prevention right now, and that there's a new demographic that's slipping into being housing insecure. We did have all the school boards, we had ethics approval for them to engage this year, and we did that through a few offices to be able to do that. So not necessarily the teachers, but I'm blanking on who the folks that work with families in the school system.
Schools Plus?
Yes. So it was all the Schools Plus folks that had access to doing the surveys. And we hope that, our hope is that we're going to do this again in 2026 if the nonprofits and frontline folks want us to. That's really the driver, is that we would get more of those organizations that would be connected to the at-risk folks, so that we can tell the prevention story of what we need there. And I think you're right, like the housing continuum, this is kind of going back to what a few people have talked about, is that it's a continuum, and it's in the final report that you can look at. And so our report, the research that we've been doing, really looks at the lower end of the housing continuum, but all is important for us to invest in, as well as those support services that our youth really need.
Absolutely.
And what's like Shift is amazing in your organization. Actually, like the people around the table at Choice are so phenomenal and doing such great work. And so it's like, how do we support them and uplift them to continue to do that work, and what do they need?
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
And thanks for the work that you do in the high schools. That's so important.
Thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead, Deputy.
Yeah, so just to add to a few things, the Housing Accelerator Fund was spoke about, but just to give some numbers, it was 2.3 million that will be used to help. I believe it's 119 net new residential units, hopefully, that we'll have within the next 3 years. Also, we're going through a review of our MPS and our land use bylaw as well, and we're hoping to, repeal things and making things a whole lot easier for when developers do come, that it's, a streamlined process to be able to not have to go through red tape or anything else. On our town website as well, there actually is a housing resource hub that has many different kind of landlords, boarding rooms, town initiatives that kind of highlight that as well. So that resource is there. Natalie also held a housing forum, I believe it was May 1st, at NSCC, that had various people show up kind of to help out and to address the situation, all in the same room, speaking on things. And it was there was an afternoon session and a night session, so people who were able to come. And we just did a strategic priority exercise back in May, and we came up with our top 5 things to look at, and the number 2 one on the list is the Housing Accelerator Fund and how we can use that. So it is on our radar. It's there. We know there's more work to be done, But, you know, I'm proud of the work that we do and continue to work together with Wanda and Choice and different people like that. But very thankful for this information that helps, you know, give us more kind of data or whatnot to work towards what we need to. But I think some good things have been done, and I think we'll continue to work at, you know, chipping this away. So thank you.
Good. Anyone else? All right, well, thank you so much. Lots
Thank
of
you.
information.
That sounds like there's so much happening and potential, and a big shout out to Choice and Wanda today for being here as well. Let me know how I can help.
Our pleasure. You're welcome. Okay, we're good to go. Is Mary still there? Oh, she's gone. Okay. All right, so staff reports. CAO report, is there anything there? Go ahead there, Deputy.
Not a question, but just as I just said, our new strategic priorities are now there. So if anyone online or community wants to look, there's we went through a rigorous 4 or 5 days, I believe, of two. Okay, yeah, it was a while, but anyhow, a lot went into coming up with these things. It just isn't a bunch of words on paper, and hopefully, you know, this is our plan that drives us towards, you know, the things we'd like to accomplish over our next term. So I always look forward to Gordon and the way he kind of runs things. It's a very open and informative, comfortable environment where everyone gets their 2 cents in, and we come up with a plan that can help lead us. So very thankful to see this here. And the thing that I like the most about it, a lot of it has a timeline. So it's not something on paper. It's actually things that we're going to accomplish, hopefully, within these timelines and continue to move things forward. So glad to see that there.
Can I speak to that?
Yes, absolutely.
So, yeah, the chart is there, and I thank council for the time and the effort that you put into this work. You know, I think it was beneficial, and I want to thank you as well for so willingly engaging and allowing staff to be a part of that, because staff are as passionate about the work as you folks are, and it was great collaboration. I think it bodes well for the future as we work through this. So every 3 months, we'll talk about this chart. It'll always be on your agenda as an information item, and we'll be updating it on a monthly basis with staff, and we'll talk about it. We'll have it as a conversation item on this agenda every few months. So thank you for that, and if there's any questions about it, the report or the chart, by all means, we're willing to answer.
Okay. I see the timelines for, so is the funding MOU to the Industrial Commission for the wharf? You got that? Okay. We're already on track. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. All right, Fire Department, and the chief is here. Any questions for the chief? Go ahead, Counselor.
Not a question, but a comment and a thank you. Our Ms. Lacroix and our class, special needs students, visited the fire department, and Mike and his team brought them around, and they got to do everything from going inside the building, the practice building, to shooting fire hoses, and they had a blast. But what I found most impressive is that in talking to Mike, he said, we're treating these students like anybody else that's in. Like they're not lowering what they're talking about. They're saying that the presentation was exactly like anybody else, and that doesn't often happen with students with special needs. So very inclusive, and very proud that
Thank you.
we're able to bring our students there and to the Yarmouth Fire Department that's so inclusive and welcoming. So thank you.
Thank you very much. We're quite proud of the program we put together. You know, all the staff and volunteers are very engaged in that. It's new. According to our fire inspector, Dave Winship, we have one of the best in the province now, fire prevention programs. So we're quite proud of it. We enjoy bringing the students to us over the past couple of years, we've had about 300 kids per year go through the building during Fire Prevention Week. And I generally lift every one of them up onto a truck myself, so I lose count. But that's the number that Dave gives me. And yeah, we really enjoy it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Good. Thanks, Chief.
Thanks.
Okay, operational services, and Chad's here. Anything you needed to share with us? It's all in the report. Okay, no questions? That's easy. Okay, planning, Natalie is away until I think next week. So any questions can go to her. Engineering, Mario's away too. Any questions on engineering that Jeff can answer? Maybe? Projects and, okay. Finance. Oh, Jerry's here. You can answer those too. We did all right with him, without him the last time, right, Jer? Okay, and recreation. I think we got some stuff coming up with recreation. Go ahead there, Deputy. Oh, did you have your?
Yeah.
Sorry,
okay.
you go ahead
Sorry, I
first.
beat you to it.
Yeah.
Another shout out. A couple groups had a gym booked for some upcoming camps, including myself, so it's self-serving, I guess, but we ended up getting bumped out of the gym, and a quick contact to Frank, and he was able to resolve that situation. And I know we're quick to comment sometimes when things don't go so fast, but I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that I think Frank jumped right on that and solved the problem for, I don't know, probably 150 kids that have a place to go this summer to participate in a sports camp. So I thought that was really good that he actively took that on. So thanks to Frank. I know he's not here to hear it, but
He'll hear it. Go ahead.
To speak to that, actually, we have reviewed at our recreation committee some of the ways that gyms are accessed, and we continue to go through the policies and whatnot to make it more, easier, I guess, for our community to do those things. So very happy to be working on that. We meet more regularly than we have in the past, and as we continue to go through these policies that some haven't been, looked at in quite a long while, I think, updating these and doing that makes issues like that a whole lot better, right? So I'm glad to hear that's already kind of making a difference. The other thing, Canada Day events are coming up, usually held at South End Playground, but because of the construction that is going on there, which is nice to see, we've moved everything to Gateway Park this year. So from, I think it's 11 to 3, I believe, on Canada Day, there'll be games for everybody, free barbecue as well. Town Council will be putting on our annual breakfast that morning. 9 a.m. out of the Hope Center. So sausages and pancakes served up by your council and a few other volunteers. So really looking forward to that. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Okay, so we're at business, 9A. And the recommended motion there is to recommend that council adopt the use of council chambers policy as recommended by staff. Okay, moved by the deputy, seconded by Councillor Lesser. Did you say anything? Okay, any questions? Go ahead.
I assume this is just more of a housekeeping, have something on paper, so it's not just kind of a whim, and there's actually, a follow-up and some protocol. If someone needs to clean up a mess, you know who to go to, right?
That's exactly it. Well read.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. We already did 9B. AMAN's conference attendance policy, to recommend that council adopt the AMAN's conference attendance policy as recommended by staff. Yep, Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Bechir-Lacroix. Go ahead, CAO.
Yeah, so the AMANS is the Association of Municipal Administrators of Nova Scotia. The association has a fairly broad membership, and we've had different members of staff at different occasions attend events that put on by AMANS. And through talking with Jerry and myself, we thought that we should put some policy around it so that would be some consistency going forward. So that's what this is.
So I just have a question. So under 5.1, it says you have to ask through your director at least 8 weeks prior to the conference registration deadline. That's a long time. I don't even start thinking about a conference till a month before, but if you think that's good,
I think
Lindsay
that's-
knows.
Registration deadline, yeah.
Okay, all right,
If it doesn't work, we'll bring it back to you.
that sounds good. Okay, any questions? All those in favor? Aye, contrary? Motion carried. Citizen Advisory Committee policy. To recommend that council approve the recommended policy amendments for the Citizen Advisory Committee agendas, reports, and processes. So moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Can I speak?
Yes, please do, yeah.
Yeah, so this, what we're
Looking at
trying to do here is essentially make consistency between all of our advisory committees, the same kind of sort of structure that we try to give council or committee of the whole by providing, detailed agendas well enough ahead of time so that you can read and understand and come prepared to give advice to council. There is an item in here that is new and is not part of what necessarily has been our standard practice, but I want to draw your attention to it. And it is the part that says advisory committees request and consider a staff report as part of the process of every recommendation to council. And that is, in a sense, what I was trying to do earlier around the burning change, is that we do have staff that administer the bylaws and probably have some perspective, whether it's a new program or a bylaw amendment, they can provide feedback. It could be a very simple report if the ramifications are fairly minor, and in some cases it'll be more detailed. But I think when things come to council through advisory committees, if you know that staff have been engaged in the process and have provided advice at least at the committee level, that report will come forward along with the advice and be attached to your council agenda for your consideration. So it's just about trying to make sure that we check all the boxes as we're considering advice to council and ultimately your decisions.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, all those in favor? Aye, contrary? Motion carried. Council committee meetings agenda policy to recommend that council approve amendments to the council committee meetings agenda policy that outline the process for items referred to budget. Moved, seconded. Discussion on this one. Go ahead.
Yep. So as you well know, this budget year has been particularly difficult, but you made your way through it. Congratulations. And through this year's process, the difficulty and the tightness of the budget caused us to deal with some matters a little differently than we had in the past, and we didn't really catch it internally, and so it was, there was a little confusion about it. So normally in the past, I would say when we had a little more flexibility, items that referred to budget were included in the draft of the budget, right? They were baked in, and there was a list, and council knew that. This year it was tight, and they didn't get baked in, and so if councilors had an expectation that things were in, when in fact they weren't, we didn't have open communication about that. So we thought about that internally and said, how do we deal with that in a way that is transparent and meets your needs? And so what we came up with is that when we have, let's say, our first capital budget meeting, you'll have your estimates and you'll have whatever information, but you will also have on that agenda each of the capital items that may have been referred to budget as specific agenda items. Now, you may not feel like in the first meeting that you're ready to deal with them, so you can just defer them to the next meeting. Or if you've had time to think about, because maybe something was referred 6 months earlier and situations changed, and you're looking at the budget and you're saying, you know what, we're not going to do that, you can pass a motion to recommend against that, and it doesn't get implemented or doesn't get included in the estimates. So the end result is that you as council, sitting as committee of the whole, have the opportunity to consciously consciously, and to consider each of those items that you referred forward to the budget process. And it won't be assumed that they're in, and it won't be assumed that they're out. You will give that direction at the appropriate time. It's good governance, and because of maybe the opportunities we've had in the past, we haven't really put structure around how we would deal with those items. So because there was a little confusion this year, I came up with this suggestion.
Okay, anything else? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Okay, we've done 9F, provincial library funding formula. To recommend that council request the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, NSFM, to consider library funding as a matter of provincial interest to all municipalities in the province. Moved, seconded. Did you want to say anything?
Well, this is flowing from the annual general meeting of the Western Counties Regional Library, which was last Thursday. And the board got an update on the funding situation, which is unstable. The library funding formula expired on March 31st this year. It was a 5-year formula that did not account for any increased funding over the 5 years of the agreement. So the province had been providing bridge funding and one-time relief grants in 23, 24, and 25, but in anticipation of the expiration of the funding formula, a committee was struck by the province last year, completed its work in September, and reported to the Minister of Heritage and Culture, under whose jurisdiction libraries fall, providing several scenarios for consideration, but identifying that if there is no funding increase, libraries are going to be in serious financial difficulties in the coming few years. There are many factors, but before the 2020 funding review formula, libraries hadn't received an increase since 2009. So they are increasingly experiencing the effects of being asked for more services at the same time that they're being asked to do more and more with less. The consequence right now is that we have managed to come in with a balanced budget this year, but with the warning that if there is not action on this funding review and the province does not deal with some of the funding issues, that there will be severe cuts to services in the next fiscal year. It just is, they will not be able to operate. And this is impacting libraries across the province. And because there is no longer a Library Boards Association of Nova Scotia, which we used to be able to use as a provincial lobbying group that was removed from the libraries themselves, I think that it might be appropriate, and I think there are other municipal units being served by other library systems in the province who have already taken the initiative to appeal to the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipality to take this on as an advocacy issue. And I just feel that it's appropriate at this point, after our board met, to come forward to have a discussion here at council to see whether or not council feels that it might be appropriate for us to forward our request, along with what I know others have done, in asking the NSFM to take this up as an advocacy issue. Thank you.
Okay. So we're on it already, and the letters are very helpful. So I was glad to see that you went to your meeting and came out with that. it's important. We've got to move on it. Okay, so moved and seconded. Any discussion further? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. We moved the grant discussion. Okay, so we've got correspondence, the tick awareness, and then there's the DNR, the Deer Governance presentation. That's for information. And additions, we wanted to do the senior safety program. And the recommended motion there is that council authorize the CAO to implement a 2-year pilot for a senior safety program. Now, if you haven't had time to read this, we can take a couple minutes and go through that now. Do you want to just take a minute, or does anyone have questions? Go ahead. Oh, I thought you were going to ask a question. Can I ask the CAO a question? You might
Yeah,
answer.
so if you have any questions. So apologize for the late delivery of this, but I didn't want to put it off until a later meeting, so I wasn't in this morning. Lindsay did a great job putting this together. Thank you, Lindsay. And so if there are any questions, more than happy to answer.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Yep, thanks. So if this goes through, when would we expect a person or this position to be started?
So if this goes through, I will approach staff to see if I can appoint the person who I have a person in mind. Then we got to figure it out, right? So we'll apply for funding from the province to help us with that. We'll figure it out. I think we just got to be patient. This is our first time at it, but we will work diligently to get the thing up and going as quickly as we can.
Okay.
And we'll report back at committee of the whole.
I have a few more if that's okay.
Yeah, you
Are we good? Okay, so I know there's an existing staff member possibly targeted for this position. Will they receive training? Or will they work collaboratively with someone who's already been doing the job in the county possibly?
Possibly both of those things, yes.
Pardon me?
Possibly both of those things,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
Definitely.
So I'm guessing this is not, at this point, and that's fine, a full-time position?
Right, so there will be other responsibilities for the staff person, so it will not be a dedicated full-time person. But I do anticipate it would be as much as 75% of a person.
Okay. So do you have a rough ballpark time of initiation?
No,
None?
no.
So this could be 2 years from now?
No. The work will begin right away. Like, we'll have to identify the training, right? Figure
Right.
out how you set this up.
Yeah.
Get the word out. We won't waste time. We will get this going.
Right on.
But I can't tell you because I haven't gone ahead and done the work yet, right?
Yeah.
To understand where the training is.
Yeah.
Or, or
Yeah,
how to.
I know there's sister municipalities that are more than willing to help out if you guys choose to go in that direction. I have been contacted, probably, I'm just reading my text, probably 4 different individuals. One who does work in that position, 3 from Joe Public, wondering when things were going to get started because they're getting, the person that works in that position, they're getting referrals steady because the people in town are beginning to know that that's a possibility. So I think it will be utilized, which is good. So, okay. Thank you.
Good. Any more questions? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. All right, any in camera? Nothing in camera? Okay, no addition? What's that? Yeah, okay, motion to adjourn. Oh yeah, we have a special council meeting. Okay,